Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Spotlight on an Amazing Leader. And we have got an awesome guest here for you today. I have been stalking her a little bit in the nicest way on LinkedIn, and she has some amazing stuff to share with us today. And that is Amy Smith. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, AJ. Thanks for having me.
So great to see you on the call. And I know you have lots of wealth of experience and knowledge that you can share with our leaders here. Everyone who's here is looking to build their leadership career and looking to improve in their confidence, and their capability. And each month, we love to catch up with someone who's doing cool stuff out in the world. And that's why I thought of you around the credibility piece. And our aim is always for these calls to kind of have two parts. And one is for people to listen to mindset lessons and any inspiration that they can get from hearing you. And the second is to listen for those practical, tactical kind of things that they go, oh, I could actually do that now. I could apply that. So for everyone listening, the chat function's on and I'll monitor that so Amy doesn't need to look at it, and we'll make time for questions and those sorts of things throughout. So let's dive right in. So thank you so much for giving up your valuable time, and you're actually doing this with us on Good Friday. So really 10 points to you for giving up your time. And for those people who don't know you on the call yet, are you happy to just do a little brief intro about who you are and where you've come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you for having me. It's great to be able to share with you guys today. And so my name's Amy, and I would call myself a business coach and a LinkedIn marketing specialist. I help other business owners, small service-based business owners and coaches and consultants to grow their brands and their business using LinkedIn. I've worked with corporate companies like Big Red Group, Executive Institute of Coaching and Leadership, General Assembly, Salesforce, just a few there to name.
Wow.
And I'm a corporate escapee myself. So I come from a HR and executive recruitment background in the corporate space, was how I kind of kicked off my career. And then I ended up finding myself launching my first ever business as a career coach, which tended to evolve a little bit more so into stepping out on LinkedIn as the platform to really grow that business. And then I had a lot of people in my network that saw me grow my brand on LinkedIn, both through my career in HR and executive recruitment, and then in the business. And they were saying, can you teach me how to do that? And so that's really sort of morphed into the work that I do now around LinkedIn and helping other business owners that way.
Amazing. And so let me take you back to that time where you were in the kind of corporate space in HR. I'm a corporate refugee or escapee myself. So, and lots of people here are still working for either the government or for
Yeah.
corporates. When you were back there, how many kind of hours did you work? How much satisfaction did you have? And how much freedom did you feel?
Yeah, so for me, I actually had quite a great team and quite a good working environment. So I guess for me, the reason for sort of leaving corporate, it wasn't because I was in so much pain that it was my weeks were terrible and I hated turning up to work. It was more so that I was feeling at the time that I wasn't probably reaching my full potential in what I
Mm,
knew that I could be doing. And I
mm,
had some other interests outside of that. So I actually had quite a good work-life balance at the time. It was very much 9 to 5. There weren't many people in the office sort of after 10 past 5 in the afternoon. And we had a small team at the sort of last organization that I worked at. But prior to that, I kind of had an experience in my career that really, I guess, changed my view around job security.
mm,
So this was at the point in time quite early on in my career where I just started, in a HR management role, and I was really sort of feeling like, okay, I'm going to really climb the ranks in this organization. I'm going to be here for a long time. And then around 6 months later, I had to make myself and around 200 other people at that organization redundant
Oh,
because we
wow.
had a big, a big transformation within the organization. And essentially, we had another organization come in and take over. So that was huge for me early on in my career, in that not only was I sort of going through that, but I had to support other people through that process as well. And so that kind of really made a shift for me in terms of I did go on to, other employment after that. But I always had that thought in the back of my mind of this won't last forever. And so I need to have a bit of a backup plan for myself. And I really started to I needed to start driving things for
Mm.
myself as well. So I guess that's sort of where it came from in the early days. Yeah.
I love that. And I love that because so many people here that I talk to are like, I'm not sure if I've got my ladder against the right wall
Mm,
or my career is capped because maybe there's a couple of managers or leaders ahead of me and they're not going anywhere soon. So I'm kind of like, I'm in a holding pattern. And
mm,
I'm curious about before the restructure, and that sounds horrific to have to do that, to have to not
yeah.
only work 200 people through, but while you're going through it yourself.
Mm.
Um, did you have a career plan before then? Was it just kind of what's the next thing, or did you have any map or plan for where you saw your future before that?
Yeah, so I kind of had a loose one, but nothing really concrete. So again, at the organization, I think I was probably the typical, maybe, stereotypical ambitious millennial at the time, where I
Right,
was really looking to, like you said, move up, and there was people that were in positions, that weren't going anywhere. And so I did feel like I was sort of capped there in terms of the
right,
potential. And so I had a bit of a plan in terms of thinking about within my role, how could I grow within my role? And I was very open-minded to where that would lead. So I kind of always thought, because I naturally leaned towards like communications roles or people roles or things like that, I knew I was playing to my strengths in those areas, but I was very open-minded in terms of what that would look like. So I didn't have to become a HR director if that wasn't the right move, or things like that as well. And I think the organizations that I was working for was a big component of that as well as the role. So it was really looking at, the organization I was working for was a non-for-profit. And so that was a really good driver for me too, in terms of making that impact in the community. And so there was a few sort of drivers in there. I'd say I had a loose plan, but nothing really concrete.
yeah,
Because I did always like to be able to keep my options open and not put myself into a box, and allow, I guess, other people in my network and other people in my world at the time to maybe like float some ideas, and for me not to dismiss them straight away. I
right.
wanted to be quite open-minded to the potential that maybe other people saw for me, as well as kind of where I thought I could go to.
Yeah, awesome. That makes heaps of sense. And it sounds like you're in a good culture and those sorts of things. So it's not like we're running away from something bad. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like, how do I continue to grow? And like all of us, I think in that earlier stage in our career, we're often quite ambitious and thinking, I could be the CEO in 5 years. We often have those kind of delusions. Fast forward to now. Let's get into now. Your coaching, consulting, supporting other leaders and other coaches and consultants to build their profile and to grow their credibility online using LinkedIn as a tool.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what that's like now and what are you learning through this process?
Yeah, first and foremost, I love it. I think it's great because you're playing in an area where you're really supporting other people to grow, and I think that's just naturally really rewarding in and of itself. I mean, you would understand that, AJ, with the work that you
Yeah.
do as well. And I know many other leaders on here. If you're helping someone on your team to grow and to reach their potential, it's usually very, very rewarding. So that's first and foremost. It's quite fulfilling to do that and to see people who might be very hesitant to put themselves out there and sell their services, even though they have this wealth of experience from the corporate space, or they've been operating, as a leader in the corporate space. But then when you come out into your own business, you don't have that company brand behind you. You
Mhm.
don't have that track record. You have to stand on your own 2 feet and you have to build your own brand, often from scratch. And so that can feel really quite overwhelming, quite intimidating, all of the things. And so it's quite rewarding to sort of support people through that journey. And I think having gone through it myself helps me to understand and recognize like where some of the roadblocks are, and some of the challenges, and help people to shortcut that. So first and foremost, really, really enjoy it. It's added a lot more flexibility into my life as well,
Mhm.
in terms of I can pick and choose the kind of clients that I want to work with. and the ones that I just know aren't a good fit and don't align, and that's okay, because we're not here to work with everyone. And so I can really just focus in on like working with the people that have that growth mindset of wanting to really grow. And that's super rewarding too. And just being able to have that flexibility of my own schedule and working out, okay, this is the kind of way that I want to work with people. This is how I don't want to work with people. Where are my boundaries here? And so I think that's been a big learning curve as well, because I think coming from the corporate space, and having a team around you too, you do kind of feel sometimes obliged, if, you know, there's projects going on and there's lots of moving parts, and if you're not the one sort of keeping pace with that, or if you're not the one like, you know, sort of doing the extra mile or anything like that, like it can seem like you're not working as hard as other people, even though you might be working way more efficiently than others. It doesn't get perceived that way sometimes. And so I think it's kind of a nice feeling to just be in a little bit more control over schedule and what that looks like too.
Amazing. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to pause for a moment and just
Mm.
check in with the group. So we just heard from a few of our members in here, Amy, a bit about their own hesitance in putting their brand and putting themselves out there, maybe posting more stories, not just necessarily commenting or voyeuring on other people, but actually starting to put themselves out there, whether that's because of the nature of the company they work for, or also just that they feel like being in service means not being showy. And I think, I don't know about you, but I work with a lot of people in the US as well. And I find that they're more likely to throw themselves out there. Whereas in Australia, people can be a little bit reserved and like, oh, I don't want to look like I'm too good for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you bring up some awesome points there as well. And I happen to have married an American, so I totally
Okay.
understand the nuances and the difference there. We're very different in that sense. But I think what worked for me in the beginning as well is I always referred to myself as a LinkedIn lurker in the beginning. So I was
Yeah.
very much behind the scenes. And that was the nature of my role too. And executive recruitment at the time, you know, I was headhunting CEOs and I was reaching out to them on LinkedIn, but everything was behind the scenes. You know, I wasn't actively going out there and talking about myself or sharing my story. And so it did take a little bit of bravery and a little bit of courage and a bit of a leap of faith. Firstly, to step out of those LinkedIn lurking shadows. And
Mm.
I remember the first time I even shared a video on LinkedIn. And don't even ask me why I thought video would be a great thing to do first off. I made it probably harder than it needed to be. Um, but it took me 6 hours. It
Oh.
took me 2 minutes to actually film the video, and 5 hours and 58 minutes to build up the courage to actually post it online. So I think if you're feeling a little bit hesitant, if you know, like for myself, I consider myself an introvert and quite a private person. And
Mm.
so I think there's sometimes we need to separate the two. Like just because you're sharing on LinkedIn, it doesn't mean that you have to be this big extroverted character, or you have to kind of fake it till you make it. Like we hear all these sorts of things. It's simply just showing up as you, and it's just allowing people to see a little bit more around the person behind the profile, and adding value. And I think sometimes if we make it about our network and the people around us and less about ourselves, it becomes a bit easier. Because then you can start to think around, okay, well, within my industry or within my role, what are some of the things that I know are some themes that keep coming up? What are some industry topics and some industry news that I can talk about that I think would be valuable for my network? And that means it's less about us, and that takes the pressure off, I think, initially. So it's a really good place to start. And then once you're sort of comfortable, I guess, you know, our brains always have that self-doubt or that reptilian brain that we have as well that says like there's danger ahead, you need to pull back. That's really normal. So I think everyone experiences that on some level. Even the top CEOs that I've worked with on this experience that at some level as well. And
Mm.
so I think sometimes it's a little bit around starting before you're ready, getting out of your own way, and just testing the waters. You don't have to go from zero to hero. You don't have to go from posting nothing to then, you know, 7 posts in 7 days. In fact, LinkedIn as a platform will reward you more if you're consistent over a longer period of time. So
Right.
you'd be much better off maybe doing a post a week or a couple of posts a week and do that consistently over 3 to 6 months than you would be to go all guns blazing and go, look, here I am. I'm going to post every single day for a week, and then you never look at it again and never go back to LinkedIn again. So I think there's a few different things. Firstly, it's really normal if you're feeling that at some level. I think all of us as humans have that, bit of self-doubt around what will other people think of us. We don't want to be judged. We want to show up. We want to add value.
Mm.
Like I had one of my clients, Anne, who's had a really great marketing background. She's, come from a high up leadership role. And then when it time to share her own stories and her own things on LinkedIn as well, she had this kind of moment where she said to me, she said, I'm just worried that anything I share is going to be really obvious. And, my response to her was that sometimes what's obvious to us isn't obvious to others around us because we're in it, right?
Mm.
And so sometimes when we share things that are a little bit obvious, like in her case, it was some marketing tips and a few things that, she just thought were very, very simple. But she actually had a lot of people from her network that reached out and said, oh, I loved what you shared. It was really helpful for me. And you don't know that until you actually start to test it and you start to share some things as well. And we have this kind of confirmation bias as well, that when we see someone else that's showing up and sharing something that we might agree with or we might have knowledge of, then we feel more connected to them as a person as well. And we build trust and we build credibility with those people. So it can absolutely help you in your own role, just to build really strong relationships with your team, suppliers, like other people around you. But also it's just, I think, really nice to be able to add value to other people. And that's a sense of reward in itself as well.
And I think that might be an important point to dig into just a little bit, the adding value to others. And I love that whole concept of adding value to your network, because sometimes it can feel like, am I just promoting myself? But also on the flip side, the green-eyed monster can jump up a bit, where we might see a peer or someone else we know putting themselves out there, and we can get a bit jealous and like, oh, everyone's commenting on their stuff, or it looks like they're more popular, or that's what I was going to say, and now I can't because that person did. So what do we do about that imposter syndrome and the green-eyed monster of, checking other people out and going, wow, they've got more followers or whatever that might be, because that's human, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to have an awareness of what people are doing on the platform, because it also gives you some ideas. It can help to brainstorm. Maybe there's some other people in your space that are talking about similar topics that you're like, oh, that's great. And I'm, kind of really knowledgeable in that space. So I think starting with what you know for sure, and playing to your strengths around your expertise is key. Because I think one of the things is if we try to be someone that we're not, or we try to copy someone else because we think, oh, that looks great, I should be doing things like that, it naturally doesn't come off as authentic as what it could be. And people pick up on that a little bit as well. And so I think the closer you can be to your truth and just sharing what you know and your knowledge, and just being okay that it is good enough, and
Yeah.
particularly it's good enough for now, because you'll grow and you'll evolve and you'll learn over time as well. So I think you need to do the best with the information that you have at the time. And that goes for anything, right? If we're trying to do anything in our career, or we're going for a new job opportunity or whatever it is, we naturally have this imposter syndrome that can pop up. And I think that's really normal. But I also think that it's this acknowledgement that that never goes away, and it's going to show up in all different areas of your career, and your life. And so we kind of have a choice where we can sit back and we can agree with it and we can say, you're right, let me just hold myself back and let me just pull the doona over my head and let me just forget that any of this even exists. Or we can just take those small action steps moving forward. And then I think the more action that you take, the bigger your confidence grows. It's not the other way around. So a lot of people will wait till they feel confident, or wait till they feel motivated, or wait till they feel ready, and you're going to be waiting forever. So it's really just taking those steps, and then your confidence will build with it over time.
And so, thinking about the context of what some of the members have shared here as well, um, what would you say are some of the tips for just starting if you're going, oh, I've got a profile, maybe I comment on a few other people's things, but I'm not really doing anything consciously to go, what do I want to be known for? How should I put myself out there? What are some of the baby steps that we could take?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when it comes to sharing content and just starting in that lane, there's two types of content that works really well on LinkedIn. One is what I call curated content, and the other is called created content.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about curated content, it's literally getting things from other people that we haven't created ourselves. So that could be a news article that you've seen pop up, that or a blog article that's been written by like an industry publication in your space. So if you're in the health space or whatever that might look like, maybe there's a new report that's come out that's really useful for you, or useful for your network as well. So you could just simply share that, maybe write a little blurb or some thoughts, or pull out a quote from that report that really stood out to you in your context. And that can be as simple as that to get you started. So you
Yeah.
don't have to come up with new ideas. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to actually talk about yourself. That's a really good way to start. So starting with some curated content, and then you move more into the
So
created content.
let me just check with the curated content. You're not
Yeah.
suggesting just commenting on others. You're actually saying create a post where you link to that content or say, I love this in this article for these reasons, or I experienced this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And with organizations I work with as well, this is a really safe way to move forward too, because often your organization or your marketing team might have material that they're already putting out there on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
so when you share something of theirs, like this is what worked really well with a team of executives I worked with recently. And, they had the CEO that would share an article. And so the other executives were able to share that same article, put their own little spin on it, or put their own little thoughts around it. And they were confident that they were okay to share that because it's come from the CEO and it's come from the marketing team. So it's pre-approved. There's no issue there.
Mm.
But also it allows you to start to get your brand and your voice out there. But it's sort of wrapped up with the company still, so that you feel that you're in alignment there. And
Great.
then
I
in
like
that,
that.
you feel a little
And
bit braver.
yeah, and that could be your
Yeah.
industry body or someone that, an industry group that you follow or something as well, talking about trends. It could even be, and you might be, I see this trend in my local area or in my company, or yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
So you can always bring it back to your role. And you always bring it back to, if the marketing team or the CEO was, reading this, are they going to be okay with this? Is this aligned with our vision, mission, values of the company, and all of those sorts of things? And I think that's a really safe way to start. Um, and then, the other side of things is when you really want to start creating your own content.
Mm.
Maybe you want to play to your strengths in that area. So if you love to write, then maybe doing some text posts, even without an image of yourself, works really well on LinkedIn. Maybe it's writing a full blog, depending on, if you love to do that. Or if you don't like to write, and, some of my clients are like facilitators, for instance, it's easy for them to jump on a quick video and talk about a quick point for a minute than it is for them to sit down and write. And so you can work your way up to doing some of those things later as well, which again just allows you to show a little bit more of you, bring a little bit more of your personality into it as well. And I think just one thing to touch on there with LinkedIn is the platform's really evolving.
Mm.
So, 6 or 7 years ago, I share this as an example a lot, but 6 or 7 years ago, I never would have shared something that was a personal story or something that was a little bit more around me. In fact, like a couple of years ago, I shared a picture of myself and my partner when we got engaged. And I put that out on LinkedIn. And if you had have asked me like 6 or 7 years ago, if I would have shared an engagement of myself and Aaron when we got engaged, I would have said absolutely not. I would have just shared that on Instagram or Facebook, or
Yeah.
I definitely would have left it off LinkedIn. But that post went viral. Like it just absolutely took off. And so what that tells me, and from other posts that I've tested as well, is like people are craving that personal connection.
Mm.
And so if you are able to share a little bit of yourself, I don't share everything on LinkedIn. I do keep things to myself, but also people want to see a little bit of the person behind the profile. So I think if you can share a little bit more, you make really strong connections with people.
I know the other day, and in thinking about that personal brand, how
Mm.
much do you share that's just professional and how much do you share that's personal? I think sometimes it can be still professional content about work stuff that you're doing, but you might share a personal photo or something that's in context. And I saw a great example of this the other day from, I think, a mutual friend, Amy, Clive Smallman. And Clive put out a post that was about attention to detail. And he talks a lot about time management and those sorts of things. And so it was about attention to detail, but his photo was of him polishing this vintage car that he owns. So he owns this beautiful, old car. And it was him washing the car. And he was talking about how that made him think about attention to detail. And
Yeah.
so he still applied it to a workplace context, but his story showed a bit of who he was. And so not only do we go, okay, he's a guy that does time management and efficiency, he also has a love of vintage cars. And I think in my own way, I always talk about, I love the wisdom of the bush and of nature and how that applies to the boardroom.
Yeah.
And so quite often my videos won't be this kind of thing. They'll be actually me just walking in my backyard, which is the bush. And so it might still be a work thing or a leadership tip, but I'll be doing it in the context of, because that's where I get my best ideas, right? Walking in the bush and I'm
Yeah.
like, I should talk about this. So I just snap a video, which means I'm often in my shorts and t-shirt and looking a bit daggy, but that's the reality of who we are as humans, I guess. So I'm hearing that's kind of what you're meaning.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some great examples there. So you're exactly right, AJ. I think it is around sort of tying in the work that you do and your expertise. But yeah, just not being afraid to show a little bit around who you are, your hobbies, your habits, the things that you like, the things, how it all sort of ties in with your world. Because that just creates like really genuine connections with people on the platform. And it really sort of puts you in a different category to the other people, maybe that are on the platform like LinkedIn, and they're on plenty of other platforms as well, that are a little bit more of the me characters. And so I think when you do that, it just comes across as way more authentic, and you're not perceived differently to how you truly are.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pause again for a moment. So we've had a couple of really great questions around how do you know how often to do something? And we heard also that LinkedIn rewards you, and how to get into kind of good habits around using it so that it's not a burden and a chore and you think, oh my God, I have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of tips do you have for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I might talk to sort of the habits and things first, and then sort of how that works with the LinkedIn algorithm and how we can get that really working for us too. I think there's a couple of things to think about. Like for anything new that we're doing, it is around creating a habit. And so sometimes it's looking at like, what are you already doing that you can attach it to? And so for me, as an example, when I first got started, it was really around engaging on the platform. And I would just spend 10 minutes a day just commenting on other people's posts. And I would maybe find a blog post that I could do. And I would spend 10 to 15 minutes a day doing that. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that every single day, but I'm sure you could find 10 minutes in your week, to have a bit of a dive into LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And for me, the kind of trigger that I'd attach it to was my morning coffee. And
Yeah.
so if I would grab a morning coffee before work, often we jump on and we can look at our emails straight away. And so if I was doing my morning coffee and I was looking at a few emails, I would just attach LinkedIn as a task that I would do as a part of that as well. And so that really is really helpful in the beginning just to give some structure. The other thing to think about is, often we can really feel like this is just going to add more to our plate. It's going
Mm.
to add more to our workload. It's going to be this burden. And it doesn't have to be that way, because we can actually look at some of the things that you're probably already doing in your day to day that can also be content for LinkedIn.
Right.
So as an example, if I was at a conference or a speaking event, I just took a photo of myself and some of the other speakers there up on stage, and then I would just share that on LinkedIn, and I would say, hey, spoke at XYZ event today, and here's a couple of the things that came out of it, or here's a couple of the key questions that I got asked, and what are your thoughts around this? And I would just share that with my network. So you're kind of allowing them to come into your day to day a little bit. So maybe it's might not be every day, but maybe there's some things that you're doing within your role that are a little bit outside the norm, or with your
Mm.
team, and you can share those things on LinkedIn as well. So I think sometimes it's like where are you already spending your time, rather than having to add new tasks and new time. And the other thing too is like some days we're just feeling really up to it and we're feeling really creative, and other days we're just not. Like other days we're just absolutely slammed with team and fighting fires and whatever it needs to happen on that day.
Meetings.
Yeah, meetings after meetings. So often I will bank my content and I will batch my content. And what that looks like is just using the example of articles. If I found one article, I could probably find 5 articles in that same amount of time really quickly if I just did a bit of a search online and I was just interested in looking at, what's going on in the world. And I could actually either just put those to one side and I could just save them on LinkedIn to come back to at a later date, or I could go ahead and schedule those. You can actually schedule within LinkedIn of the platform. So you can actually create a post. You can post it live straight away, or you can set a time and date of when you want to post that down the track. So sometimes this can turn, like for me, what it's turned into now is I do all my posting once a month. So I actually only dedicate time once a month to doing LinkedIn, and I will schedule all of my content for the month ahead so that it just comes up, it just happens, and I'm doing my day to day. I'm working with my clients, I'm working with my team, and it all just sort of happens in the background. So, you might not want to do a full month, but you might do 2 or 3 posts at a time and just have them scheduled, a week or 2 in advance. And it's almost like it's a set and forget kind of activity that you can do. So that's another thing that really works in terms of those habits.
That's a great tip if you're time poor, even if you find your days and weeks get scheduled with lots of meetings, which most
Yeah.
leaders here get. It's almost schedule a meeting with yourself like once a month
Yes.
to just go, let's just have a think about some LinkedIn things. And I know for me, as my career has developed, I now have someone who supports me with a bit of my
Yep.
LinkedIn posting. And
Yep.
so all she does is my little videos and things I do, I just send them to her when they're done, or she just scrolls through and finds them. She uses a software to transcribe them. And then she just turns what I said into an article. So it's still me, it's still my voice, but she just goes, oh, that could be a post. And then she does that and schedules it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like leverage your team. If you've got a team member, if you've got an EA or something that can support you with this, that's what a lot of the executives I work with will have, an EA that will, they might get it 20% done and the EA does the rest or whatever needs to happen, but you can work with other people on this as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also if you're in a network with other people in your industry or colleagues that you also want to support each other, it might be, hey, one of you writes an article once a month or a post, and you can all curate and share each other's.
Yeah.
So that way if you had 3 friends, there's 4 weeks done.
Yeah.
Yes, you could
Totally.
do one, they could all do one each, and I'll just comment a bit on yours and curate and share that. And that
Yeah.
way you're being a good supporter of your network as well.
Absolutely. And just to touch on sort of the activity and the algorithm side of things with LinkedIn, that is really supportive of that too, AJ, because, with LinkedIn, kind of the rhetoric is like the more you put in, the more you're going to get out and the more you're going to get rewarded. So from a platform perspective, LinkedIn do reward people that they deem to be active on the platform. And so your activity can be all different things. It could be just doing a like and a comment on someone else's post. It can be posting yourself. All of these sort of things get like sort of added up and rewarded for you in your profile. If you're someone that has your profile sitting there, you've lost your login details, it's collecting what I call internet dust, and you haven't looked at it for 6 months, then when you go to post something, if you haven't kind of like revived your profile a little bit first, it's going to be harder for that post to reach the amount of people that you would kind of expect, or maybe you want it to. And so what happens is we have this negative feedback loop where we go, okay, well, I'm putting this effort into a post or a blog or whatever it is. No one's liking it. No one's commenting it. I must be terrible. Like
Right.
that's what we sort of
I
think.
give up.
I give up. Yeah, this doesn't work for me. Like all of those things is what we kind of jump to straight away. When in fact, it just means that LinkedIn doesn't really know about us yet. And we haven't really given the platform a chance to reward us because we haven't been active enough yet. So one of the first things that you can do, even if you're not looking at the content side of things, is exactly what you're saying there, AJ, is like showing up and supporting other people in your network that are sharing. And that's going to help bring more people across your profile too, so that when you go to share, LinkedIn go, okay, like this person is active. And LinkedIn will test you over time as well, which is why the consistency is really good. What I notice with a few people that I've worked with is often there's a plateau period. So, you know, if you go from posting nothing on LinkedIn and then you start posting, even if it's once a week, twice a week, whatever your cadence is, you'll have a spike. Like you'll experience this big spike because LinkedIn goes, who is this new person? Like, let's, you know, give them a bit of a run and like, let's just see. And then if you're continuing to post and maybe you've changed nothing at your end, like maybe you've been just as consistent, the quality of your posts are the same, like maybe you're just doing it. And there's always a certain point, usually around like the second or third month, where you hit a little bit of a plateau.
Okay.
And even though you're putting in the effort, your little line on your profile views might plateau a little bit. And that's just LinkedIn's way of testing you, because they're kind of going like, is this person here to show up for the long term? Do we want to keep rewarding this person or not? And that's the point where a lot of people will give up and they'll say, I've tried everything, it's not working, and they'll give up. When in fact, when you can just keep consistent through that point, you'll notice that it'll spike back up again. So
Right.
I think that's something to keep in mind, is not get too disheartened by, you know, the likes or the engagement or things, because there's always people watching behind
Yeah.
the scenes. Like if you're a LinkedIn lurker right now, like I used to be, you would know that there's things that you see that you don't actually engage with.
Right.
But that's the kind of snowball effect of LinkedIn as well. And that's where some of our best opportunities, honestly, can come from people that have never even engaged with us, but might reach out down the track and say, hey, you know, I think there's some things that we can do together as organizations, or, you know, can we have a talk? I've got a team member that I think might be a really great fit for your team. Like, this is how things start to really evolve in terms of opportunities on the platform as well.
So I'm just going to bring up, I know those who aren't watching YouTube later but are listening won't be the same, but you could actually Google and go onto LinkedIn and look up Amy Smith right now. And I love that you're no fluff, because I have no BS on my profile, Amy, so I'm in good company. Can you just talk us through a little bit of what have you done here to make your profile pop? Because it does stand out.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I can talk about profiles all day, so you'll have to cut me off if I start rambling. But essentially from sort of top to bottom, one of the biggest things that you probably notice is just the use of visual media. So if you have visual media on your profile, which is as simple as having a profile photo and then also your cover image and your banner image on LinkedIn, your profile will naturally attract 21 times more views than
Wow.
someone else that's a like for like profile that doesn't have any visual media. So that's an instant way that you can stand out. With mine, you'll see that the big picture idea is that you want people to kind of jump on your profile and see it to believe it. And so for many of us, it's as simple as, what are some of the things that are really contextual to the work that we do? So for me, I've got in my profile that and so in my image, I've got me speaking on stage. It kind of connects the dots for people, and it allows people to go, okay, she says she does this, and now I can visually see it, so this all makes sense to me. And that's just like an unconscious thing to do, but that creates credibility and trust within like the first few seconds. So naturally, people will have around 6 seconds to spend on your profile before they decide to read more or click off.
Wow.
And so you want that to really capture attention. All right.
Um, Also, I think in your name and your title, I love that you've used descriptors, which is a trick I learned a few years ago and do myself. Often people just put their actual formal title, don't they? Like executive director or manager of blah. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about that text that's under your name.
Yeah, for sure. So you want to think about going beyond your job title on your headline. And there's reasons for that. The main reason is that LinkedIn is very keyword sensitive and keyword heavy. So when you can actually have the keywords around what you do or something maybe around your industry, for people that are actively searching for that, or people that are wanting to find people in your space, you will naturally rank higher than other people. And so you're exactly right, AJ. There's sort of, you know, it's good to have your job role there because often it'll have the keywords and people will naturally sort of find you through your job role. But you also want to have what I call like a credibility statement or a doing statement that goes with that.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially it's like, what is the result or what is the outcome, or, you know, what does it mean to be doing the role that you're in? And so, you know, if you're in the health space as an example and you're making an impact on people's health and their lives, like what does that look like? If you're working for a government organization and you're working on this huge infrastructure project, or there's something going on that's really impactful, like what does that look like? And so it might be, you know, that you're improving the road system in New South Wales, or whatever that looks like for you in your context. And so I think that there's, yeah, the credibility in the doing statement gives people more context around your role and how you're kind of playing a part in that as well.
Wow, that's amazing. There's so many things there that we can take away, and I hope everyone's hearing lots of gold and is going, I do seriously need to think about my profile. And I did notice the little green tick ahead of your name as well. Go goes really well with the green jacket that you're wearing in the image. So it's almost like this subtle, tick. Amy's got the goods. She's
Yeah.
kosher. She's even wearing the green tick color. So I love that. It's kind of a subtle way of saying you've got the tick of approval.
Yeah, and I think just emojis in general are okay on LinkedIn now. You know, there's definitely ones that you could use that fit really professionally with what you're doing, even like little dot points or bullet points or things like that you can integrate in your profile. And again, it's just another way to add a little bit of oomph, where you can stand out and it draws a little bit more attention perhaps than other people's profiles, but it's still, you know, very aligned, very professional, very on brand with, you know, your organization.
Yeah, I do know of a marketing professional who helps people with developing merchandise and things for conferences and stuff like that. And her marketing brand is red, and it's all around bringing the heart into things, not just giving away tacky stress balls and things, but actually making them connect to the business. So it's all about this heartfelt. And she has heart emojis. And normally, you would have gone keep that for Facebook or something else, but it's completely on brand for her.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
totally. Yep.
So, Amy, you've delivered so much, and I think everyone, I almost need to feel like we need to send you some consulting dollars because it's like, hopefully, everyone goes away and polishes their profile after hearing from you. I really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing your earlier story and also what you've built to and how you've grown your business now. Everyone just saw your LinkedIn profile. Is that the best place for people to go and follow you? And I've also put it in the chat box for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. Also, amylsmith.com is my website. So that will head you in all different directions as well. I've even got my LinkedIn blueprint there as well. So that's a free resource for anyone that's wanting to dive a little bit deeper into some of the steps and really start to get yourself out there on the platform. You can head to amylsmith.com/blueprint and grab that as well.
Yeah, and I would say after us booking in to talk today, I went and downloaded that to have a look. And everyone, it's not only stylish and really a groovy document, it's very simple and step by step. So I think everyone could put a few things in place just to tweak and improve your profile a little bit. And if you're a bit tentative of putting your feet in the water, maybe just do some of those profile improvements first and then start curating some other content. But loads of value here. I'd love for people who are on the call to put in the chat box what's been of most value for you today. What's the one thing that you've really taken away? Any other final words from you, Amy?
I just think take that leap of faith in yourself and put yourself in the way of opportunity on the platform. It's not as scary on the other end as what you might think. A lot of the fears and doubts and things that you may have around what's going to happen, you might find the opposite happens as well, which is the experience that I've had and a lot of my clients have had as well, where you'll actually have an abundance of support on the platform, and other people and other colleagues will really enjoy what you're doing and what you're putting out there. So I think start before you're ready, get out of your own way, and just don't be afraid to give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Everyone that I work with that's looking to build their career and advance in their career, so many of them say they know that the recruiters or even the people that are interviewing, they go straight on LinkedIn and have a look at you. So it needs to be more than just a resume because they're probably seeing your resume. It needs to give them a bit more of a picture of the story because then they confirm and go, yes, this person is exactly what they're saying in their job application. So we're getting,
Absolutely.
thanks for a great session. I'll be following up on scheduling posts. Great. And getting your own rhythm. That's awesome. Thank you, Alison. I know for me, LinkedIn has been really a key part of me being able to build and serve more. And for me, ever since my 20s, and I was only talking about this on a video this morning, ever since my 20s, I discovered Robert Greenleaf's servant leadership and the concept of a leader being a servant first. And from that day, I just kept going, how do I serve my people? And initially, that was my team. But as my career's grown, it's been other people in the industry, you know, other people like we are, Amy, kind of like peers in this industry. And so I think even if you have that approach to LinkedIn and just go, how could I serve more people? You can't serve them when you're in the dark in your room with your doona over your head. So please share your stuff because anything that you do in your career that you think's boring, for those of us that don't do that stuff, it's so fascinating. Like I love hearing about what other people do in their role. So please share and don't be afraid. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom today, Amy. Everyone go and check her out on LinkedIn, download that free resource and also send us some info, you know, hook us in if you do a change to your profile so we can go and check it out and have a look too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, AJ. It's been great to see everyone on the call today.
Thank you.